Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our On the Hour live afternoon world news services here on TVP World. My name's Don Arleth. Russia hasn't shown that it wants progress in achieving peace in Ukraine. That's what the Big Five have said in a joint statement. Foreign ministers of France, Germany, Italy, Poland, and Spain met in London today to discuss Russian aggression against Ukraine and Euro-Atlantic security. The Ukrainian military says that Russian forces launched dozens of attacks along Ukraine's eastern front just after a 30-day ceasefire put forward by Kyiv and its European allies was set to officially begin. The Kremlin responded by saying that Russia will not yield to ultimatums after European leaders warned of new sanctions if Moscow refuses the ceasefire. The wave of attacks are perceived as the Kremlin's rejection of a ceasefire proposal. A day earlier, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had expressed hope that the truce could open the door to diplomacy. He also said that he would wait for Vladimir Putin in Turkey for peace talks. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has just said that he might fly to Turkey Thursday for the Russia-Ukraine talks. Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's president, and the newly elected Pope, Leo XIV, discussed an allied proposal for a 30-day ceasefire in their first phone call since the pontiff was elected last week. The two also talked about Ukrainian children abducted by Russia. Zelensky, who later described the conversation as, quote, warm and substantive, noted that Ukrainian authorities are counting on the Vatican's help in regards to the children's return. President Zelensky also invited the Pope to make an apostolic visit to Ukraine, expressing hope that the pontiff's appearance would bring encouragement to all Ukrainians.
Good morning, and thank you.
Poland has ordered the closure of the Russian Consulate in Krakow following evidence linking Russian intelligence to a 2024 arson attack on a Warsaw shopping mall. Deputy Russian Ambassador Andrey Ordash received the diplomatic note on Monday and called the accusations absurd, warning of Russian retaliation. Speaking to reporters after the meeting, Ordash dismissed the accusations as absurd and baseless and confirmed that the consulate must cease operations by June 30th. The closure order announced by the Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski is a direct response to confirmed links between Russian security services and the fire that destroyed a major shopping mall on Mariwilska Street in May of last year. The blaze affected around 1,400 shops and service points. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk confirmed that some suspects were already in custody, while others had been identified and were being pursued. Polish truckers are returning with a blockade of the Ukrainian border crossing in Dorohusk. According to its leaders, the protest comes in response to a huge influx of Ukrainian shipping companies threatening their livelihoods. The demonstrators are calling for EU-level regulations to stop unfair competition from Ukraine. The Committee for the Protection of Polish Shipping Companies and Employers of Poland are saying that many Ukrainian truckers transport their cargo without having the correct paperwork and complaining that EU officials are not taking their pleas seriously. The protesters added that special privileges for Ukrainian shipping firms were only supposed to solve the problem of the Black Sea blockade, but this argument is no longer valid. The truckers are saying that they will allow only one truck per hour to enter Poland, but they do not plan to stop any non-commercial vehicles. A meeting between representatives of the committee and lawmakers from the Polish Ministry of Infrastructure is set for Wednesday. You're being judged by the company that you keep. This was the scathing message delivered by the EU executive Monday morning at a press conference directed at Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico and Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić. The slap on the wrist came after the two leaders defied Brussels' warnings to attend Russia's controversial military parade last week in Moscow. And now we are joined live by our EU correspondent, Angela Skujins from the Belgian capital. Good afternoon, Angela. Now, what is the likely impact from this contentious trip?
Yes, hello, Don. So what we've been hearing for the last couple of weeks in the run-up to this 80-year commemoration is that there will be serious consequences for Serbian President Alexander Vučić as well as Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico. But just going back to that Serbian President Alexander Vučić, we know that that country is inching towards EU accession. It hopefully wants to join the 27 member states strong bloc. Slovakia well and truly is a member of that club. However, we have heard from the European Commission that this attendance by Vučić will not go down well by the European Commission and by those other member states fully supportive of Ukraine against Russian aggression. This was reiterated by the European Commission spokesperson for Foreign Affairs, Anita Hipper, today in the Belgian capital. Let's take a listen to what she meant.
Short answer is you're being judged by the company you keep. And the more detailed answer is that Russia was exploiting the end of the World War II celebration for propaganda and a justification for a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. So from our side, we should always refrain from giving legitimacy to Putin's war of aggression and stay united.
So according to media reports, Vučić not only attended the event, but he held bilateral meetings with Russian President Vladimir Putin, also laying a ceremonial wreath. Paparazzi took photos of Robert Fico shaking hands with Russian President Vladimir Putin months after he said that the EU cannot dictate where he does go and where he doesn't go. But these warnings that we've heard from these EU officials reached fever pitch on Thursday after the EU High Representative Kaja Kallas said that the EU will not look kindly towards these visits. But what can happen next? We haven't heard anything from any of the senior institutions regarding whether sanctions will be applied to Belgrade as well as Hungary, sorry, not Hungary, my mistake, but that other capital. We'll have to wait and see whether discussions progress at a Foreign Affairs Council meeting focusing on trade as well as sanctions later this week. We also know that those Serbian students, 21 of them, that ran from Belgrade to Brussels got in today. They'll be meeting with the European Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Koz, as well as the Youth Commissioner, where we're hearing from senior officials that they are receptive to the calls from these students for change. But that's all from Brussels. I'll send it back to you in Warsaw.
All right, thank you. Angela Skujins reporting there from Brussels. Now, a day after Albanians went to the polls, the country is now watching closely as results begin to take shape. With EU accession, anti-corruption efforts, and regional dynamics on the line, this election could mark a turning point. Let's go to our correspondent Aisha Baci in Tirana for the latest on what we know thus far.
The Central Election Committee of Albania has released the preliminary results of the parliamentary election that happened Sunday, May 11th. We can see that the Socialist Party wins with 53% of the votes, securing 79 seats in the 140-seat parliament. And this is the party of incumbent Prime Minister Edi Rama, who will be securing an unprecedented fourth term in office, and he has campaigned on the promise of making Albania a member of the EU by 2030. The main opposition gets 34% of the vote, which is the Democratic Party led by Sali Berisha, who is a former president of Albania, and they have campaigned with the promise of making Albania great again, so with more nationalistic ideals and promising higher wages, higher pensions. We can also note that turnout was low at 42%, which shows a disillusionment among Albanian voters and reflecting once again the brain drain, the mass emigration that has been a challenge for Albania. We can see that with the Socialist Party winning, that Albania will be staying on the fast track to EU accession. But of course, this doesn't only depend on the Albanian political will, but also also on the reforms that they will be able to make, especially in terms of governance and anti-corruption. And this will determine whether the EU will accept Albania as a new member by 2030. Reporting to you from Albania, Tirana, for TVP World, I'm Ayşe Bacı.
And that concludes this edition of World News. Thanks for watching and stay with us here on TVP World for more.